on 910 AM, the Superstation, the voice of Detroit. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. We are live tonight. It is Sunday, October 8th, 2017. Sunday, October 8th, 2017. And we are live tonight. We have a lot to talk about today. A lot to talk about tonight. There's a lot going on in the news. And I was in Louisville, Kentucky last weekend at the All-Black National Convention organized by Dr. Boyce Watkins. So there were some people from Detroit there. We had a Detroit delegation there, even though a lot of us didn't know the other one was going to be in Detroit. And a lot of people saw me on the panel discussion on last Saturday, dealing with white supremacy and reparations. So they may want to call in because they can attest that I blew everybody away. All right, excellent panel discussion. So, so a lot has happened since the last time I was on the air live. We know that we had the attack in Las Vegas. Stephen Paddock killed 58 people, wounded at least 527. Some were trampled on, some shot. Interesting enough, Donald Trump did not call him an SOB, but he called NFL players, predominantly African Americans, protesting police brutality, protesting the oppression of African Americans and people of color. He called them SOBs. Interesting. And then we see Friday. I think it was yesterday, October 7th, Saturday, October 7th. We saw Richard Spencer, who's the president of the National Policy Institute, who coined the term alt-right. We see he and some other very fine people, a bunch of white supremacists with tiki torches. Once again, they held an unplanned rally in Charlottesville to protest the removal of the General Robert E. Lee statue. And this is in the same part. This is the same statue that brought about the protest, the Unite the Right rally, back August 12th, 2017.
Denise, please.
Okay. So Donald Trump, as of a couple hours ago, when I was watching MSNBC, Donald Trump has yet to comment on this. Is he going to call them SOBs? Or is he going to say, oh, they're just exercising the First Amendment right? Check out the article from rawstory.com. Richard Spencer and other white nationalists march with torches in unplanned rally on Charlottesville. Now, they did this August 11th, the day before the Saturday Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. They did this August 11th. They did it again. So let's see if Trump is going to talk about this. Now, today you have Pence, who left a Indianapolis Francisco 49ers game because you had 15 to 23 players on the San Francisco 49ers team to take a knee during the white national anthem. Let's call it what it is. It's the white national anthem. You've heard me talk about this before. You've heard me deal with the history. It's the white national anthem. I talked about this in Louisville, Kentucky. I'll be in Atlanta this weekend. The world premiere of Black Friday Part 2, The Living Legacy, another documentary that I'm in. Impact Center, world premiere. October 13th, Friday the 13th, October 13th. It's the white national anthem. We need to be very clear on this. If you don't understand the history, research Francis Scott Key, white supremacist slave owner, who thought that African people were mentally inferior, who used his position as U.S. attorney to Washington, D.C., to attack abolitionists and to suppress abolitionists who were trying to free enslaved African people. But he writes about the land of the free and the home of the brave, September 13th, 1814, after witnessing the defense of Fort McHenry during the War of 1812 when the British attacked Fort McHenry in Baltimore. Deal with the history. If you don't know the history, just say you don't know it. Okay? Don't try to create a false narrative. So, you have Pence, who planned, this was planned, and I talked about this on Facebook today, on my Facebook fan page, the African History Network. We're almost at 1 million followers. Be sure to follow us, the African History Network, and my personal page, Michael Imhotep. It may take me a while to get around to accepting your friend request on my personal page, because I got about 1,020 people waiting for me to accept their friend request, and I got about 500 available slots. So we'll see what happens. But you can always follow me on my Facebook fan page, the African History Network. So when I saw the news today on MSNBC and read the articles from Washington Post and New York Times and NBC News, but when I first saw the article from the Washington Post today about Pence leaving a San Francisco 49ers game because some of the players took a knee, I said, well, this was planned. He knew this. Hell, it was the San Francisco 49ers. That was the first team to take a knee. That was Colin Kaepernick's team. That was the first team to take a knee. What did you think was going to happen? So this was a planned stunt. Pence isn't slick. Trump is trying to take pressure off of him being attacked for attacking the players, trying to divert the issue. He's trying to divert the issue from them protesting the oppression of African Americans and people of color, police brutality, etc. And he's trying to make this about the flag. So I posted on Facebook today, my personal page and my fan page. This was 7 hours ago. This was when the story first broke. I said VP Mike Pence leaves a 49ers game because some of the players hashtag take a knee during the white national anthem. I called it what it is. It's the white national anthem. WTF did Pence think they were going to do? Okay? This is the team where the protest started. This is the team where the protest started. What did you think was going to happen? This is the team where the protest started. I think he planned to walk out from the start. Now, I posted this before all the tweets came from Pence, because came from Trump, because rawstory.com has an article today, and they talked about it on MSNBC, because they had a reporter at the White House who talked about this, and you look at the article from the Washington Post, Trump says he directed Pence to walk out of game and 49ers protested during national anthem. That's the headlines from the article from the Washington Post. They planned this from the start. What do you think was going to happen? I said he is serving under a coward named Donald Trump, who, when it came time for him to defend the flag, got 5 deferments so he didn't have to serve in Vietnam. This is what Trump did. So Trump wants to talk about the flag. Trump, when it came time for him to defend the flag, he got 5 deferments because he was too much of a coward to go fight in Vietnam. And he said that his Vietnam was avoiding getting STDs in the 1970s. That's what Trump said. You can go research this yourself. This is what Trump said. So this was a planned stunt today because they don't want to deal with why these athletes are actually protesting. They want to divert attention and make this about the flag. Well, if you actually read the U.S. flag code, which was introduced June 14th, 1923, most of these people disrespect the flag. Most of these people disrespect the flag. On my flight to, so this past weekend, I flew from Detroit to Louisville, Kentucky, and I had a connecting flight. So I had 2 flights going to Louisville. On both flights, the pilot on the flight wore a U.S. flag necktie. You know that's a direct violation of the U.S. flag code? You know the U.S. flag code states that the U.S. flag should never be made into clothing that's worn? So you got these people who want to attack players for taking a knee, even though the bylaws of the NFL don't state that it's mandatory for them to stand during the national anthem. That came out last year. But you got the U.S. flag code, and shows how all these people usually are violating the flag that they say the players should stand up and respect. And most of these people, when they are at home watching a game, don't even stand for the national anthem themselves. Get out of here with that nonsense. Get out of here with that nonsense. So on tonight's show, we're going to get deep into this. We're going to deal with Mike Pence planned stunt today. VP Mike Pence walks out of an NFL game because 49ers players hashtag take a knee during the national anthem. He was directed by Trump to do so. And Trump admitted it in his tweet. In his tweet, Trump admitted it. He said that I asked VP Pence to leave stadium if any players kneel. This is the San Francisco 49ers. This is the team that started the protest. What do you think was going to happen? Then, back on September 28th, my man Roland Martin called out Tucker Carlson of Fox News about lying about the NFL players protesting racism, because you have these right-wing media outlets that consistently outright lie and say the players are not saying why they're really protesting. That is an outright direct lie. We can look at September 25th when Eric Reed, who was the second player on the NFL 49ers team, I think he may have been the second player. He was one of the first players in the league. He may have been the second player in the league, period, but he was the second player on the 49ers team. He took a knee alongside of Colin Kaepernick, when Colin Kaepernick was on the 49ers team. He wrote an op-ed article for the New York Times, September 25th, 2017, called Why Colin Kaepernick and I Decided to Take a Knee. This is New York Times. This is mainstream. He wrote an article explaining why he and Colin Kaepernick decided to take a knee. So when you have these right-wingers who consistently outright lie, and that's all it is. It's a lie, because all the people, let me explain something to you. I don't have anybody that does research for me. They got all these people running around getting them coffee doing research for them. If I can find this, why can't they? I don't have anybody do research for me. I do all this. I have people like Professor Hunter Adams who send me a couple articles here. He'll send me some articles here and there, but I go read them. But I don't have anybody actually do research for me. They have people do research for them. They have people to write scripts for them, all that. I don't have none of that. Now, if I know this, why don't they know? They're lying. That's what it is. So, we'll talk about that as well. And we'll show how Roland exposed Tucker Carlson for lying on Fox News, because that's what he did. Then, you have the FBI, that is a leaked memo from the FBI making up a term to lump a bunch of African-American organizations into one title or one group, and they're calling them Black Identity Extremists. Black Identity Extremists. News1.com has an article. FBI labels Black Identity Extremists as terrorist threat. Really? Is Trump going to talk about these terrorists that are marching with tiki torches Saturday night? Trump didn't call, when you had August 12th, 2017, in Charlottesville, Virginia, when the Unite the Right rally happened, he ain't calling any of those white supremacists terrorists. He ain't calling any of those white supremacists SOBs. He ain't talking about their mamas. None of that. You just had this happen Saturday night. Richard Spencer, once again, marching with tiki torches. He and his little group of white supremacists. Is Trump going to talk about them? Or is he going to keep attacking NFL players? But see, it's something deeper than this, because Trump always wanted to own an NFL team. And the owners wouldn't let him own an NFL team. So then he got a USFL team, the New Jersey Generals. And he's largely responsible for bringing down the USFL, because the USFL played their games during the spring. And he was the main one who convinced the team owners to change their schedule to the fall to compete with the NFL. And the USFL went out of business. They then filed a lawsuit, a monopoly lawsuit, against the NFL. And they won that case, and they were awarded $3 in damages. So when you actually research this, Trump has had a grudge against the NFL for a long time, because they wouldn't let him buy a team. And then the USFL that he was heavily part of, and he was an owner of the New Jersey Generals, the USFL flopped. So there's some history behind this. Besides him being a white supremacist, there's some history behind this as well. So you have to research this. So you have the FBI labeling African-American organizations, some African-American organizations, as Black Identity Extremists. But at the same time, white American men are the biggest domestic terrorist threat in this country, and they're a greater domestic terrorist threat than Muslim foreigners. And there's an article from Vox.com about this. It was another article, I think, from thinkprogress.org this past week that talked about this. So you have all this taking place at the same time while Trump is trying to attack NFL players standing up against white supremacy and the oppression of African Americans and people of color. And they've stated this numerous times. They made videos about this, even in the article today from the Washington Post. You can check it out, WashingtonPost.com. Trump says he directed Pence to walk out of game if 49ers protested during national anthem. There's a video for Malcolm Jenkins, a current NFL player. There's a video in there talking about why they're protesting. They're talking about police brutality, things like this. So once again, when you have these white right-wingers, when you have Sarah Huckabee Sanders, White House press secretary, what should we call her? The accomplice to the liar in chief. When you have her talking about, oh well, you know, they're not really talking about police brutality. The protest has gotten off track. Well, because they are responding to Trump lying on them and trying to make this about the flag. But, you know, then you have them talking about, well, taking a knee is disrespectful. Taking a knee comes from the military. It was Nate Boyer, former Green Beret, former NFL player, who met with Colin Kaepernick for 90 minutes and convinced Kaepernick that it was more respectful to the military and to the veterans to take a knee because kneeling comes from the military. When they have a fallen soldier, you have soldiers that serve with that soldier. They kneel at that soldier's casket. When they present the flag to the family of the fallen soldier, like to the soldier's wife or to the soldier's husband, the soldier kneels and presents that flag. They fold the flag 11 times. They kneel and present it to them. Kneeling comes from the military. If Trump's cowardly behind actually served in the military, maybe he would know this. But keep in mind, when it came time for him to defend the flag, he got 5 deferments. So let's deal with facts and evidence. Let's deal with facts and evidence. Proper documentation ends all conversation. They don't want to deal with the facts and evidence. They don't want to deal with the truth. They want to create alternative facts. They don't want to deal with white supremacy and racism because Trump doesn't call it out. So this is what you're dealing with. Vox.com has an article, White American Men Are a Bigger Domestic Terrorist Threat Than Muslim Foreigners. These are facts. White American men are a bigger domestic terrorist threat than Muslim foreigners. But Muslims, but Trump advocated a Muslim ban. Trump advocated a Muslim ban. White domestic terrorists commit terrorist acts at an almost 2-to-1 ratio from Muslim foreigners. So why isn't Trump and the Trump administration focusing on the domestic terrorism coming from white men? I'm not saying all white men commit domestic terrorist acts. No. But the data is overwhelming. But this comes from the xenophobia that Trump thrives on and the xenophobia that helped put Trump into the White House. Including, you set aside the Russian involvement and the rampant voter suppression. It was xenophobia, Islamophobia, things like this that Trump tapped into and drove home. And it's going to end up bringing down his administration. All you have to do is go look at what happened to Richard Nixon. All you have to do is look what happened to Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon was forced to resign from office. He got a pardon from Gerald Ford, who's from Michigan, and 48 people around Richard Nixon went to prison. Richard Nixon got elected to the second term. I don't think Trump gonna make it through his first term. He may not even make it through this year. Because if you look at what's happening with the Russian investigation, this thing is accelerating. And aspects of that 35-page dossier are being verified. So Trump is trying to change the headlines and change the narrative. Because his administration is crumbling. You've had like 19 key people who resigned from his administration since January 20th, since he took the oath of office. Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price was the latest one. Rex Tillerson, I don't think Rex Tillerson gonna make it to the end of this year. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who called Trump a moron, he was correct. I don't think he's gonna make it to the end of this year. So we're going to deal with that. And then also, you know, October 12th is Columbus Day, where a lot of people honor this mass murderer named Columbus, who never came to this land that we call the United States of America. The closest he came here was Cuba, which is 90 miles away. But a lot of cities are celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day because they're dealing with the real history. And they're realizing, well, wait a second, we're honoring, number one, a mass murderer who brought genocide to indigenous people and indigenous African people and Native Americans. Number two, he never came to this land. Well, there's a good article that deals with 5 quotes, 5 scary quotes from Christopher Columbus that show how treacherous he really was. So we'll deal with that in the second hour, and we'll also deal with this date in African American history. Okay? A lot to cover. Haven't been on live in 2 weeks. Check out my podcast. You can listen to podcasts of my shows and read all my articles at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I just interviewed Dr. Jahi Issa and Brother Reggie Marbury out of the New York area because they wrote an excellent article dealing with reparations for BlackAgendaReport.com called Reparations is Dead, How to Resurrect It. Reparations is Dead, How to Resurrect It. And he dealt with some new cutting edge evidence and information that has come out about the transatlantic slave trade and about the importation of African people into this country from 1808 to 1861 when the Civil War started. Because in 1807, the U.S. signed the international treaty to end their participation in the transatlantic slave trade, meaning that they would not bring any more enslaved Africans into this country. Now, the slavery could continue in this country, but they wouldn't bring any more Africans into this country. Well, they violated that treaty, which went into effect January 1st, 1808. And there were other treaties like 1810, things like this. They violated all those treaties, and you're going to have somewhere between 2.5 to 3 million enslaved Africans still brought here from 1808 to 1861, which is human trafficking. See, it's one thing to talk about prior to 1807, but after January 1st, 1808, they're in violation of their own laws. So they have a cutting-edge article, BlackAgendaReport.com. So all those fighting for reparations, you need to read this and incorporate this information into your argument. Reparations is dead, how to resurrect it. Okay, BlackAgendaReport.com. And you go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com and listen to the interview I did with them. All right, call-in number is 313-209-9000. 313-209-9000 is the call-in number. If you have a question or comment, Denise will come to you on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show on Michael Imhotep, 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, the voice of Detroit. We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, the voice of Detroit. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. We are live tonight. It is Sunday, October 8th, 2017. And we have a lot to talk about. I was in Louisville, Kentucky this past weekend at the All Black National Convention. You can go to allblacknationalconvention.com, allblacknationalconvention.com, and you can look at highlights. They have where you can subscribe and watch the replay of it, watch clips, things like this. Okay, so right before the break, we were dealing with Vice President Mike Pence staging a walkout today at the order of Donald Trump. Donald Trump said, "I asked VP Pence to leave stadium if any players kneeled." Trump posted on Twitter, "I'm proud of him," and Second Lady Karen, that's Mike Pence's wife. Okay, so Mike Pence went to a San Francisco 49ers game today. They were playing the Indianapolis Colts. And during the national anthem, you have 15 to 23 players on the San Francisco 49ers team that took a knee. Now, keep in mind, this was Colin Kaepernick's team. This was the first team to take a knee, or the first team to sit on the bench or kneel in protest of the oppression of African Americans and people of color by this country, by the police, and they protested against the flag and the national anthem. So what did Pence think was going to happen? This was all staged, okay? And if you go back and look, we're going to go to the phone lines in just a second, but just very quickly here, if you go back and look at the first article that dealt with this protest, August 27th, 2016, by Steve Weiss for NFL.com, Colin Kaepernick explains why he sat during national anthem. Colin Kaepernick explains why he sat during national anthem. Kaepernick said, "I'm not going to stand up to show pride in the flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color. To me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. There are bodies in the street and people getting paid leave and getting away with murder." Okay? But he also talked about the military. Okay? And he said that regarding the military, he said that he had family members who were in the military. He said he was not disrespecting the military, anything like this. He said his stand is not against men and women in the military fighting and losing their lives for Americans' rights and freedoms. Okay? And he was very clear on this. You can go back and look at early articles dealing with this. USA Today has one from August 28th, 2016. 49ers Colin Kaepernick, "I'll continue to sit for national anthem. I'll continue to sit for national anthem." That was over a year ago. He talked about how people aren't being held accountable. He said there are a lot of things that are going on that are unjust. People are not being held accountable, and that's something that needs to change. That's something that this country stands for, freedom, liberty, and justice for all, and it's not happening for all right now. Okay? So, but then he also said that when the flag and this country represent what it's supposed to represent, that he'll stand for the flag. He talked about that as well. Okay? So it's interesting how people don't want to deal with that. Okay, he actually said, so dailymail.co.uk, August 28, 2016, has an article. I think it's also in the one from USA Today. Defiant 49er quarterback Colin Kaepernick faces mounting anger as he insists he will continue to sit for national anthem at NFL games in protest of the oppression of black people. Very clear. Protesting the oppression of African Americans and people of color. He said, when there's significant change and I feel like that flag represents what it's supposed to represent, this country is representing people the way it's supposed to, I'll stand. It's interesting how people like Vice President Mike Pence, Donald Trump, Tucker Carlson, Fox News don't want to deal with these quotes that are documented of why the protest is taking place. Let's go to Denise, line 1. Hey, Denise, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding.
I really like the information that you are providing. Some things I have been aware of, and some things I'm learning. So this is good, because I'm not a millennial, but I wasn't back in the 60s. I wasn't born until 71, so I came through a time where and I remember this, and it's really crazy. I remember when the Indianapolis coach used to be the Baltimore coach, the Mayflower truck left. I was a little girl then.
You said the Mayflower truck left?
The Mayflower trucks carried the players out of Baltimore.
Oh, okay, the moving truck, the Mayflower moving trucks.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I remember that. So if we're going to talk about what the flag stands for, if we're going to talk about what's right and what's wrong and all those things, I remember watching a picture. I remember them posting a picture of Trump standing up with some other people doing the national anthem, and he didn't cross his heart.
Right.
He didn't even put his hands up.
Yeah, Melania had to nudge him.
Oh, well, my thing is, I'm like, okay, if we're going to go with what is acceptable to the flag, it's not about the flag. It's about what the country is supposed to stand for. It's not the flag. That's what the kneeling is for. Kneeling is also done in football practice. In high school, band practice. Football, okay, if the coach is talking, everybody took a knee because he was talking.
Yeah, but the kneeling and protest is done in the military, and it came from Nate Boyer. That suggestion came from Nate Boyer, a former Green Beret, who met with Colin Kaepernick for 90 minutes. That's where the kneeling came from. So it comes from the military. It comes from the military.
Right. So if we can't, like you said earlier about educating ourselves. One group that's not familiar or did not take the time, either one of the two, didn't take the time to research and educate themselves, or they were in an environment that produced not, oh, this is what it is, and they went with it. So whatever it is, we still have to take upon ourselves to educate ourselves if we feel like what's being said to us or what's being done is incorrect. And then that's coming up. That was for his side. That was for the other side. If you're going to say what's acceptable and what's not right, then you need to fully be educated on the whole thing. Reading a teleprompter is not educating yourself. That's somebody else writing your speeches. That's somebody else telling you what to say.
Right. You have to be educated on the issues.
With no feeling.
Right.
Exactly. So, we're teaching our children. We are teaching the millennials and younger. We are teaching them that this is the behavior that's acceptable. It's going on in the schools. It's going on in the neighborhoods. It's going on in the grocery store. Everywhere.
Right.
It's being more and more open as being acceptable because they're saying, oh, okay, well, this is what happened on TV, so, hey, I'm going to go and do this. It's okay.
Right.
I'm not going to get in trouble.
Right, exactly.
I can go in the backyard and play with somebody and put a rope around their neck and kick him off the picnic table and leave moss around his neck. You know, I saw the article, and I'm like, okay, oh, well, yeah, we got to protect him because we don't want him hanging over his life the rest of his life. But what about the kid that he did that?
Right. You know, well, what's happening is with Trump, and I warn people about this, and people, if they go back and listen to the podcast and my various shows, you can go back during the presidential campaign, I warn people about this. Trump has emboldened a lot of white supremacists. Trump has emboldened a lot of white supremacists so they think that they can just do anything and get away with it. Okay? This is because Trump has not wholeheartedly condemned white supremacists in his actions. He may say something from a teleprompter, but he hasn't condemned what happened Saturday with Richard Spencer and the Tiki Torches in Charlottesville. And at the same time, when you look at Trump's budget, they took money away from organizations that rehabilitated white supremacists and focused on, I think it was Muslim terrorists or something like this. Okay? They took money away from organizations that were focusing on rehabilitating white supremacists. Okay? All right, thanks for calling. I got to get these other calls. Okay? Thanks, Denise. Okay, hey, John, line 2. Welcome to the African History Network show. Go ahead with your question or comment, John.
Okay. Thank you for taking my call.
Yes.
I don't know if you recall, but the military was paying them national football league teams to have their national athletes play at the games for a while. That's what I understand.
Well, what happened was, there was from fiscal year 2012 to fiscal year 2015, the U.S. military, National Guard, Department of Defense paid sports teams $53 million. There was a big study that came out, a 145-page study commissioned by Senators John McCain and Senators Jeff Flake, both from Arizona, called Tackling Paid Patriotism. Tackling Paid Patriotism. Yeah. Okay? Yeah, go ahead.
And a lot of those teams, at first, they weren't good. They really weren't good and so forth.
Well, it was the team owners who did it to get the money. And it was the NFL, NBA, NASCAR, Major League Soccer, National Hockey League. They were all getting money from the military to have patriotic displays from 2012 to 2015. Go ahead.
Yeah, now I don't know if you're familiar with it, but somebody put out a big lie today over with his Facebook or something that Kaepernick said that he would go back and if he get a job back with NFL, he would stand up and salute the flag.
Right. That was incorrect. And
Go ahead.
Yeah, that was incorrect. So Kaepernick's girlfriend, Nisa Diab, tweeted about it and said that was incorrect. That came from Jason LaCanfora, who's a reporter for CBS, I think it was, and he had to admit that he said, quote, standing for anthem wasn't something that I spoke to Colin Kaepernick about on Saturday. I relayed what had been reported. About him standing in the future. Okay, so Jason LaCanfora had to tweet about that and recant that statement. That's not true. Go ahead.
Yeah, he was said that was the biggest lie ever been told. He said just that Churchill said a lie travel around the world within minutes.
Right.
The truth take hours to travel around the world. And so he was, I mean, the people was behind him was very upset that they put out a lie like that and so forth.
Right.
And he didn't appreciate it one bit. So I seen a football player on one knee, and I was proud of him and so forth. And thank you for bringing the knowledge forward and so forth. Thank you
Absolutely.
very much.
All right, John, thanks for calling. Okay, so look at the article from news1.com, news1.com from today. It was posted a couple of hours ago. Reports of Kaepernick ending his anthem protests are wrong. Reports of Kaepernick ending his anthem protests are wrong. The reporter who broke the story now clarifies that he did not speak with Cap about whether he would kneel if a team hired him. Okay, news1.com. Check out that article. It just came out a couple of hours ago from Nigel Roberts. I had already read it before we started the show. That's how I knew that that statement was false. Let's go to Jack, line 3. Hey, Jack, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
Detroit.
Detroit. All right, go ahead with your question or comment. No problem.
I was just calling in reference to racism and to some of the things you was talking about. But the main question I wanted to ask you was,
okay,
could you name the main actors that was involved in the Atlantic slave trade?
Mm-hmm.
Who was the number one actor? See, the movie Roots must have been a lie because I seen some blacks chasing a black man and they chained him up and put him on a ship.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I thought that the blacks in Africa was the main instigator. But you had told me a couple of weeks ago that it was something else involved.
Oh, the main instigators were Europeans. Main instigators were Europeans. Absolutely. Read an article from Dr. Malefe Kete Asante called "Gates is Wrong About African Involvement in the Slave Trade." Okay, Gates, Gates. Gates is wrong. Yeah, Gates. He's talking about Henry Louis Skip the Truth Gates. He's talking about Dr. Henry Louis Skip the Truth Gates. Gates is wrong about African involvement in the slave trade. Okay, Google that article. That's at asante.net. ASANTE. Asante.net. And Dr. Malefe Kete Asante.
It comes so weak.
Cause just one second. Just 1 second here. Just 1 second. I'm explaining this to you. Dr. Malefe Kete Asante, who actually has a PhD in Africana Studies, Afro-American Studies, right? He teaches at Temple University. He wrote that article in response to the op-ed article that Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. wrote in February of 2010 for the New York Times called Ending the Slavery Blame Game. Ending the Slavery Blame Game. And in that article that Gates wrote, he put the majority of the blame for the transatlantic slave trade on African people, which is historically inaccurate. As Asante talks about in the article, he talks about how all people have had collaborators, but they're not blamed for their own oppression. There were black South African police officers in apartheid South Africa who were oppressing African people, but they were not the majority of the police force, and we knew who was in control. So if you read that article, he goes through and dispels that myth. The Africans were not in control of that at all. Go ahead.
Do they teach that in the public schools?
Largely, in the majority of them, no. If you're talking about public schools nationwide, Majority of them, no, because if you look coming out of Texas, and Texas is one of the largest school districts in the country. Texas and California are basically have the two largest school districts in the country. So the way that Texas and California go based upon the textbooks that they order, is usually the way the rest of the country follows. So we saw a couple last year, I think it was, coming out of, I think it was Texas. They had a textbook from McGraw-Hill that talked about the enslaved Africans coming to this country were something like domestic workers or something like this. They weren't dealing with the real history of the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, and at the same time, what they're not going to tell you. So another thing you should do, Jack, read the article that I referenced a few minutes ago before the break from Dr. Jahi Issa and Brother Reggie Marbury. Now, Dr. Jahi Issa has a PhD in it's either Africana Studies or Afro-American History, because Gates' degree, okay, his PhD and his master's are in African American literature. Okay, his bachelor's is in history. All right. So when we look at many of our scholars, their background is in Africana studies, African American studies, things like this. This is what their PhDs are in. So if you read the article from blackagendareport.com called "Reparations is Dead, How to Resurrect It," Dr. Jahi Issa, who I forgot which college he teaches at now, he deals with, and Brother Reggie Marbury, they deal with how starting in 1808, January 1st, 1808, those Africans that were brought to this country enslaved, it was illegal because the U.S. violated their own treaties that they signed. Now, I doubt if that's being taught in the school, in the majority of the schools across this country. Okay, we got time to squeeze Larry in, or at least start this call. We'll get to Larry. Hey, Larry, thanks for holding. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Detroit, Michael. Thank you, sir, for taking my call.
Hey, no problem.
You know, one of the things that I'm so very interested in, or very startled by, is week after week you come out with these historical facts, setting the record straight. I'm really concerned. Just like you talked earlier in the show, talking about the conference, how you came forward with reparations, and that particular issue, supposedly someone made a statement about reparations is dead. You know, how is it that we have issues that we have with Kaepernick taking a knee?
Sure.
Reparations for black people, the disempowerment of black people, historical facts being misrepresented. How is it that you come week to week, but yet there is no evidence of those issues being taken forward? How do we have a boycott? How do we boycott what's going on in the NFL? I mean, to have solidarity within, our stand or our boycott.
Right.
The NFL. How do we boycott? How do we have an effective boycott?
All right.
Listen up, you forgot it, sir.
Okay. I'll explain that on the other side of the break. All right. And we're coming up on a break in just a minute. So when we come back, I'm going to get into a clip talking about Mike Pence. I'm going to get into Roland Martin exposing Tucker Carlson on Fox News as a liar when it comes to the NFL players' protest. And we'll talk about how to have an effective economic withdrawal strategy from the NFL. We'll talk about this as well. If you're watching on Facebook, share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. Tell those listening on 910 AM, the Superstation, those watching the live stream or whatever broadcast you're watching on. Hey, call everybody you know. Tell them tune in to 910 AM, the Superstation, the African History Network show with Michael Imhotep is on. 910 AM, the Voice of Detroit. We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Voice of Detroit. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. We are in our second and last hour. Hey, if you like this show, hey, be sure to visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can read all of my articles there. You can listen to podcasts of our shows. I have almost 800 podcasted episodes of our shows there. You can listen to the interview I just did Thursday with Dr. Jahi Issa and Brother Reggie Marbury. dealing with the reparations for African Americans, and dealing with the transatlantic slave trade, but also the human trafficking of enslaved African people that took place from 1808 to 1861. Okay, and that's a very, very, man, we went for about 2 hours with that. And they were dealing with some cutting edge research that has just come out. Go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can listen to all the podcasts on my shows there. You can also order my DVD lectures there as well. So if you like this type of information, I have about 35 of my presentations there. My latest presentation is called The Racist History of the White National Anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance. The Racist History of the White National Anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance. I did that Tuesday, September 26th. 2017 is a 3-hour presentation. I go really deep into the history. I tie the history of the Pledge of Allegiance and Francis Scott Key, and the history of the national anthem, and a white Baptist minister named Francis Bellamy, who actually was a socialist, by the way. So a lot of Republicans who are out here saying you should stand for the national anthem, they probably don't know it was written by a socialist. Imagine that. Imagine what happens when Donald Trump finds out the national anthem was written by a socialist. Huh. But he doesn't read anyway, so, you know. Maybe somebody will tell him. Okay. And I tie all that into Colin Kaepernick's protests, everything. So that's at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Also check out my presentation, the 13 Forms of Wealth. 13 Forms of Wealth, Keys to Economic Empowerment and Entrepreneurship for African Americans. I also deal with redistributing the pain with economic boycotts. So let me go over this quickly, because my calendar for October is extremely busy. So I want to let you know where I'm going to be in October, and then we're going to go to Angeline's call, and we're going to answer the question from, I think that was Jack, dealing with boycotting NFL. Okay, so this coming weekend, Friday, October 13th through Sunday, October 15th, I'll be in Atlanta for the world premiere of Black Friday Part 2, The Living Legacy, a new documentary that I'm in dealing with economic empowerment for African Americans. So go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have the information there. The premiere is going to be Friday, October 13th, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Impact Center. And you can also go to thefilmblackfriday.com, thefilmblackfriday.com for more information. Let's see, the 17th, I'll be at Eastern Michigan University. Dr. Patrick Pia, who teaches in the Department of Africana Studies, he has me coming to speak to his class that day, and actually teach the class that day, I guess. So I'll be at Eastern Michigan University on the 17th. I think that's a Tuesday. That's when because I come back from Atlanta Sunday night, Sunday evening. And then the next day, the 18th and 19th, I'll be in Chicago at Chicago State University because the Black Mall is organizing the Ujamaa Marketplace. So I'll be at Chicago State University. They have a lot of vendors there. Come on out. Visit theblackmall.com for more information, theblackmall.com. We'll get this up on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. And then October 21st, I'll be speaking at Hartford Memorial Baptist Church here in Detroit. Hartford Memorial Baptist Church here in Detroit, 18900 James Cousins Highway. 18900 James Cousins Highway, another slave owner. And this is their social justice ministry, the social justice ministry. They do it this year. So Sister Mary Grant was gracious enough to have me back again. I spoke a couple of years ago. I was afraid they didn't like me, so she had me come back. So I will be doing 2 workshops on Saturday, one at 9 a.m. to 10:15 a.m. and one 10:25 a.m. to 11:40 a.m. dealing with African American resistance in the era of Donald Trump. Voter suppression, reparations, and high elections have consequences. African American resistance in the era of Donald Trump. Voter suppression, reparations, and high elections have consequences. So do 2 workshops. My man Jamon Jordan, who I've had here on the show before, he's a local historian here from Detroit. He'll do a workshop dealing with faith, freedom, and fire. Faith, freedom, and fire. The fight for liberation and the origin of Black Detroit. And the keynote speaker on Saturday is going to be the one and only Angela Rye from CNN political analyst Angela Rye. She's fine as hell also, you know. I'm just saying. I know she's with Common, but still, you know. I'm going to meet Angela Rye October 21st, that's all I'm saying. Okay, so for more information, call 313-704-3695, 313-704-3695. We'll get this up at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. And then on Thursday, October 26th, Brother Bomani and Sister Shoshana, the Malcolm X grassroots movement, they have me as the keynote speaker from the State of the City address at Sacred Heart Seminary. Okay, the State of the City address. That's Thursday, October 26th. I think that's from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., something like that. They're going to get the flyer to me. We'll have that at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So look out for that. So my October is crazy. November is starting to get busy. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, email me at info, I-N-F-O, at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, info, I-N-F-O, at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com if you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization. You can also call me at 313-462-0003, 313-462-0003. And we try to put all this information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can also sign up for my email newsletter there as well, okay? Because I send out an email newsletter and let you know about events where I'm going to be across the country. All right, let's go to line one. Let's go to Angeline. Angeline, welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. Tell us where you're calling from.
Detroit. Just a note in history about the so-called Christopher Columbus. His name was Cristobal Colon,
right?
Originally, and
he was Italian.
Working exactly with Queen Isabella, so-called Queen, her cargo, and there was insurance policies on a lot of these slaves, and whether they killed themselves, jumped over, or they were pushed over, and they cashed in these insurance policies. Could you expound on that? And that he was eventually put into prison by her because he broke her bank, and I think he died there. So let's hear.
Well, yeah, he was exposed as a fraud. I'm going to do with Columbus in the last segment of the show, but he was exposed as a fraud at that time. In 1492, and his last voyage was in 1504. He died in 1506. I don't know if the banks were financing, well, I don't know if the banks had insurance policies at that point. You're going to have, when the transatlantic slave trade really gets going, you're going to have a lot of your early banks that are going to take out insurance policies on not just the slave ships, but also the enslaved Africans on the ships. We see the case of the Leusden. We see the case of the Leusden, Leusden. We see that case in 1738. We're going to see those the captain of that ship cash in the insurance policy. You're going to have something like 660 Africans who are going to die on that ship that sinks. Okay, so a lot of your early insurance companies are going to take out insurance policies on enslaved Africans on the ships, but also in this country you're going to have insurance companies like the New York Life Insurance Company. There were over 40 insurance companies in this country that took out insurance policies on enslaved Africans on the plantations. Okay, not just on the slave ships, but on the plantations. So the New York Life Insurance Company starts in the spring of 1845 as the Nautilus Mutual Life Insurance Company, and they sold, for the first 3 years, they sold 508 insurance policies on enslaved Africans on the plantations. So a lot of slave owners, if they had Africans who worked in very dangerous industries like on steamships and sawmills and coal mines, things like this, they would take out insurance policies and they could recoup 3/4 of what they invested in that enslaved African when that person died untimely. Okay, so this is going to take place. New York Times had a big article about the New York Life Insurance Company and their ties to slavery, and you could Google that. Search for that New York Times. That just came out earlier this year, I think it was. So I'll talk about Columbus in the last segment of the show, because we have some quotes from Columbus that are going to blow your mind, that deal with his treachery. And you have a lot of cities that are now celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day as opposed to Columbus Day. But the name of that article from the New York Times is called Insurance Policies on Slaves. Insurance Policies on Slaves, New York Life's Complicated Past. New York Life's Complicated Past. Go ahead with your, finish your comment.
Well, I just think the whole thing was terrible. I mean, risque at this job and that job, being on a slave ship, period, and, you know, doing that to people, our people. Well, I just like to everybody to take a note on that, and if you need to expound on it later, do so. And his name was not Christopher Columbus. It was
well, that's English. Cristobal Colon, but most people don't refer to him as the Italian name. In different languages, you're going to have different variations of his name. So Cristobal Colon was Italian, but in this hemisphere, in English, he's known as Christopher Columbus.
I understand. All right, thank you so much, and
Okay.
Take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thanks for calling. All right, 313-209-9000 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 313-209-9000 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Okay, so I want to get to this clip from MSNBC. Rawstory.com has this article today dealing with VP Mike Pence, and Mike Pence is busted for the protests, okay, for walking out of the NFL game today, okay, with the Indianapolis Colts and the San Francisco 49ers. All right, let's go to this clip. I want you to hear this.
Let's bring in NBC News' Peter Alexander.
Okay, turn up in here, please. People can hear on
What's the
Facebook.
latest on all of this? This just happening this afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's good.
Richard, you laid it out pretty well. Those are basically the elements that we know to this point. The president just a short time ago basically saying that this was his idea, that he discussed with the vice president in advance, that if anybody took a knee at this game, that the vice president should leave. So let's set the table for you a little bit here. The vice president, you remember, just in Las Vegas, speaking about the desire for unity in this country, obviously in the wake of the terrible disaster, the shooting that took place there a week ago. Then he flew last night to Indianapolis with the sole purpose of going to this football game where the Colts, obviously his home state being Indiana, where he formerly served as governor, would be playing the San Francisco 49ers, the team where Colin Kaepernick, the former quarterback who obviously began this entire situation by taking a knee last season during the national anthem to protest what he believed was, among other things, police brutality and racial injustices throughout the United States. So Pence went to the game. As soon as he saw someone take a knee, he left. They departed a short time later, and as we understand right now, he's already on a plane en route to Los Angeles for a political fundraiser. So certainly the president, the vice president had come up with what they believed was the best way to communicate this stand, which is one that a lot of Americans support, the idea that that football players should respect the flag. But it's obviously a divisive issue as well, with many people insisting that these players deserve their right to free expression. They have the right to the First Amendment right to be able to do whatever they choose. Among the questions right now that remain to be answered is, was this a political? Many people suggest it was, and the bottom line is the vice president, is a government official allowed to use taxpayer money to fly into a place like Indiana for what many people view as a political stunt? So those are some of the questions we'll be focusing on going forward, but at least for the moment right now, this is obviously the latest in what's really become a cultural war. Richard?
Thank you so much, Pete. NBC's Peter Alexander.
Okay, that was Peter Alexander of MSNBC at the White House this afternoon. Read the article from rawstory.com entitled Busted. B-U-S-T-E-D, busted. Pence made press wait in van so he could leave game early for taxpayer-funded stunt. NBC reports. Pence made press wait in van, V-A-N, so he could leave game early for taxpayer-funded stunt, NBC reports. And Trump came out and said, if you read the article from the Washington Post today, this afternoon, this was last updated, I printed it up, last updated 5:46 p.m. Trump says he directed Pence to walk out of game if 49ers protested during national anthem. In the article, Trump tweeted, I asked VP Pence to leave stadium if players kneeled. I am proud of him and Second Lady Karen. Okay, this is San Francisco 49ers. What do you think they were going to do? This is Kaepernick's former team. But once again, when you look at Kaepernick's statements, and this is the people who oppose the protests. One, they don't want to deal with the oppression of African Americans and people of color by white supremacy and racism, and the at the hand of the police. They don't want to deal with that. They don't want to deal with over policing, anything like that. They don't want to talk about that. They want to distract you and say, oh, they're protesting against the flag and we should stand and salute the flag and respect the flag. But at the same time, they don't want to deal with how they disrespect the flag on a daily basis. So if you read the article, if you understand the U.S. flag code, the U.S. flag code introduced June 14th, 1923, and June 14th is Flag Day. Read the article from HuffingtonPost.com. Here are some ways people disrespect the flag daily based on flag code. Here are some ways people disrespect the flag daily based on flag code. Ever use a disposable picnic plate with a U.S. flag on it? The flag code frowns on that. So when you read this article, they talk about how it's against the U.S. flag code to have American flag clothing, bathing suits, blouses, dresses. That's a violation of the U.S. flag code. In the U.S. flag code, it states the flag should never be used as wearing apparel, bedding, or drapery. It should never be festooned, drawn back, nor up in folds, but always allowed to fall free. That means every American flag swimsuit, button-up shirt, and even those famous Old Navy flag shirts can be considered disrespectful. That's based upon the U.S. flag code. Interesting how Trump doesn't want to talk about the U.S. flag code. Okay, so then they talk about how disposable flag products are a violation of the U.S. flag code. It should not be embroidered on such articles as cushions or handkerchiefs and the like, printed or otherwise impressed on paper napkins or boxes, or anything that is designed for temporary use and discard. So the flag is not supposed to be on things that are disposable. It's not supposed to be on napkins. It's not supposed to be on paper plates. It's not supposed to be on paper cups. Any of that stuff. That's violation of the U.S. flag code. But these people don't want to talk about that. I wonder why. The U.S. flag is not supposed to be used in advertisements. Uh-oh. The flag should never be used for advertising purposes in any manner whatsoever. The U.S. flag should never be used for advertising purposes in any manner whatsoever. So Macy's Flag Day sales. I posted a video from, I forgot which news source that was, and they showed a clip of a TV commercial advertising a Macy's Flag Day sale, and they had the U.S. flag in there. That's a violation of the U.S. flag code. But it's interesting how people stay quiet on that. But you want black players to stand up for the white national anthem. And most of the people who criticize them when they sit at home and watch the game don't even stand up for the national anthem themselves. And when they're at the bars, at the sports bars, and the national anthem comes on, they don't stand up most of the time either. If a business company is using a flag in its advertisements, there's yet another disrespectful gesture. A flag printed on a disposable flyer is probably a double offense. But then you have flag uniforms. The U.S. flag code says no part of the flag should ever be used as a costume or athletic uniform. However, a flag patch may be affixed to the uniform of military personnel, firemen, policemen, and members of patriotic organizations. But the U.S. flag is not supposed to be on, it's not supposed to be part of their uniform. It's not supposed to be part of their helmet decals, things like this. It seems like sports teams are running afoul of the guidelines by putting the flag on uniforms. The only way to respectfully wear the American flag on a costume is with a patch or a patch on the side of the uniform for service members, firefighters, and police officers according to the U.S. flag code. So it's interesting how they don't want to talk about none of that. They want to attack the NFL players, but then don't want to say how they are total in violation of their own flag code, because we didn't create the U.S. flag code. This was created by Europeans. Read this article from HuffingtonPost.com. See, proper documentation ends all conversation. Here are some ways people disrespect the flag daily based on the U.S. flag code. HuffingtonPost.com, written by Doha Madani. Okay, September 25th, 2017. ever used a disposable picnic plate with the U.S. flag on it? That's in violation of the flag code. Okay, so, all right. Jack called and he asked about boycotting the NFL. Okay, so very quickly here. Here's some things that we could do. First of all, it has to be bigger than getting Colin Kaepernick his job back or getting another job. Okay, so there has to be a strategic set of goals that want to be achieved. Now, some things people can do is, one, cancel your NFL ticket. Okay, DirecTV, whatever it is, NFL ticket. Two, stop watching the games. Now, keep in mind that unless you're one of the 100,000 AC Nielsen surveyors, your TV viewing habits don't have anything to do with the ratings. You have to be an AC Nielsen surveyor. There are about 100,000 in the country. Go to acnielsen.com, research how are TV ratings calculated. How are TV ratings calculated, and research that. You have to be an AC Nielsen surveyor for your TV viewing habits to impact the TV ratings. Okay. However, what you post on social media, a lot of advertisers see that when you have things that trend, when you have hashtags that trend, etc., like hashtag take a knee, advertisers see that. Also, organizations, now I'm not sure if colorchange.org is involved in this yet, but go to colorchange.org. They're doing a lot of really good work with various protests and economic withdrawal strategies. I have to look and see if they're involved in this with the NFL. But various organizations have to put pressure on the advertisers. Now, some advertisers are locked into, from my understanding, locked into contracts until 2020, something like that, 2022. But you could still leverage the billions of dollars that African Americans and other people you spend with these corporations on a yearly basis to get them to put pressure on the NFL, just like these corporations had economic withdrawal from the state of Indiana and the state of North Carolina behind the Indiana Religious Freedom Law of 2015, signed into law by Governor Mike Pence at the time, who's now vice president. And when Governor Pat McCrory signed into law the transgender bathroom bill, you had about 250 businesses and corporations that had economic boycotts and economic withdrawal and put pressure on the governor and the state legislature to change the rules. Okay? So they speak out for LGBT but won't speak out for BLACK. These are the same corporations we spend dollars with. Okay, so you can look and say, well, wait a second. How are you silent on these issues impacting African Americans, but you're so vocal on these issues impacting the LGBT community? How is that possible? So you have to leverage the dollars that you spend with these corporations to put pressure on them to speak out on your behalf, just like they're speaking out on behalf for the LGBT community. I'm not mad at them for doing this, but wait a second. Hold on. How you speak out for LGBT but won't speak up for BLACK? So this is why we have to look at redistributing the pain through economic withdrawal strategies. Okay? And then also, you have to look at where the NFL is spending their dollars when it comes to vendors, when it comes to advertising agencies, contracts that they give out. What percent? Now, the NFL is at least 70% African American. So what advertising agencies are you using? What percentage of those advertising agencies are African American? The vendors that you use, vendors for transportation, things like this. What percentage of those vendors are African American? The NFL has financial advisors that they recommend for their players. What percentage of those financial advisors are African American? The league is at least 70% African American. As my man Dr. Greg Carr, my friend Dr. Greg Carr, who's on News One Now with Roland Martin a lot, he said you got a slave revolt going on in the NFL right now. So this has to be bigger than just one man getting the job. This has to be bigger than that, because what will happen is it will get to the point where the 33 team owners will get together and they say, okay, you hire this Negro to shut all these people up and sit them on the bench the rest of the season to stop the protests and stop the momentum. So it has to be bigger than just Kaepernick. Okay? All right. Let's go to Sean. Sean, line 1. Hey, thanks, Sean. Thanks for holding. Welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from. Detroit. All right, my man, go ahead. It's John. It's John. Sean John. Okay, go ahead, brother.
How you doing this evening, brother?
Oh, I'm all right, man. Just tired, but go ahead.
Okay. So here we go about the protests,
Yes, sir.
the boycott of the NFL. Now, here's one of the key things that has to happen. Colin Kaepernick has to visit city to city. He has to visit the people that want to boycott him. He has to be more visible. He is too low-key. Now, I'm not saying he should go there and tell them to continue doing what they're doing, but he should go there. He should go there and shake their hands. Go there to each city that is standing up for him and say, you know what, I want to shake your hand for wanting me back in the NFL. That's one of the key things right there.
You know he was just in Harlem, right? You know he was just in Harlem doing that, right?
But that's what I'm saying, though. Not just Harlem. He got to do a tour. He needs to be around Detroit. He needs to do multiple tours. That's what he needs to do. He needs to keep it up and keep the momentum flowing. But see, and also, he needs to constantly let them know, okay, yeah, I do want to be back in the NFL, most definitely, and I appreciate everything. But I just want to see more from him talking to the people. Next, most definitely, going for the sponsors. We have to go for the sponsors. And also, there must be black and brown unity. He is brown, he is black, but he's brown as well. So we need more Latinos to identify with him as well, because he does look somewhat Latino. I mean, he might be black and white, but still, he looks like a Latino. He looks like a Hispanic. So therefore, I want him to relate to the Hispanics as well. So we need black and brown to unite on this. And then, of course, some white people will get on board as well. United together, we can boycott and make a difference.
Okay.
Go for the sponsors. Don't go to the games.
Mm-hmm.
Don't spend any money. Make sure you let your women know we are boycotting, you know, and we're going to make this happen. Together, united, we stand. And that's going to make more players constantly take a knee and constantly step up more for Colin Kaepernick. And I do believe with this continued effort, together we can make it happen way before the season is over with. Because I want to watch football, but I'm not going to do it because I want justice first. Because black lives matter like all lives matter. And it's about justice.
Okay. All right, thanks for calling. Thanks for calling. Now, because Cap is not on a team, and Cap is doing what he has to do. Cap is still trying to keep a low profile so he can get back on the team. Other players have stepped up. Malcolm Jenkins, Michael Bennett, things like this, okay? I don't think Cap has to do a tour to let people know he appreciates them. Follow him on Twitter. Follow him on Twitter. Go to his website, Kaepernick7.com, Kaepernick7.com, because he's showing you where he's donating his money. He was just in Harlem. He donated about $25,000 worth of backpacks to kids in Harlem. We posted articles about this on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, okay? But this is a time for him to stay low-key. Really, if you understand long-term strategy, this is a time for him to stay low-key. And other people are coming to the forefront, picking up for him, you know. When you study the history of slavery in this country, there was a reason why enslaved Africans ran away at nighttime and not in the daytime. Because they had a better chance of winning. They had a better chance of escaping. Ran away at nighttime, not in the daytime. So you got to know when to be quiet. You have to know when to be low-key. Okay? This is a time, if you understand long-term strategy as opposed to short-term gain, this is a time for Cap to be low-key. But he's tweeting, and people are reposting his tweets. But you have to be careful of what you say and what you do if you understand long-term strategy. Okay? All right. So those watching on Facebook, share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. When we come back, I want to go to a clip from Roland Martin taking it to Tucker Carlson on Fox News, exposing Tucker Carlson for lying about the protest. Then we're going to talk some about Christopher Columbus and some quotes from Columbus that show his treachery. We'll deal with that also. And we'll talk a little bit about the FBI labeling some African-American organizations as black identity extremists. They just made this term up, black identity extremists. Okay. Hey, you listen to the African History Network show right here on 19 AM, the Superstation, the voice of Detroit. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in the station, the voice of Detroit. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can read all of my articles there. We have a recommended reading list of books there, recommended reading list of about almost 60 books. A few more I have to add. All of my DVD lectures are there if you want to order those. My latest one is the Racist History of the White National Anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance. And I go deep into that history. I have about 35 of my presentations there, I think. And if you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, email me at info, I-N-F-O, at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, I-N-F-O, at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, okay? Check out this article from the Washington Post. This is from November 4th, 2015. At least 50 teams were paid by Department of Defense for patriotic displays. At least 50 teams were paid by Department of Defense for patriotic displays. This goes back to what I was talking about and what John talked about when he called in. Okay, I want to go to this clip here from News One Now with Roland Martin, where Roland took it to Tucker Carlson on Fox News and exposed him for lying about why the players are protesting. Let's go to this clip.
All right, folks, despite what remains a catastrophic situation in Puerto Rico, 1 week after the U.S. territory was decimated by Hurricane Maria, Donald Trump is still focused on slamming NFL players in the league over their protesting racial injustice during the national anthem. This is what 45 told reporters yesterday.
The NFL is in a very bad box. You cannot have people disrespecting our national anthem, our flag, our country, and that's what they're doing. And in my opinion, the NFL has to change. Or you know what's going to happen? Their business is going to go to hell.
Ah, is that the case? Really going to go to hell? Ratings were up over the weekend, Donald. That's a fact. 4%. F-A-C-T. Also, the wife of course, deceased football player and member of the Army Rangers, Pat Tillman, she has said, enough with y'all pimping my husband's service. This was a statement from his widow, Marie Tillman. Pat's service, along with that of every man and woman's service, should never be politicized in a way that divides us. We are too great of a country for that. The very action of self-expression and the freedom to speak from one's heart, no matter those views, is what Pat and so many other Americans have given their lives for. Even if they didn't always agree with those views, it is my sincere hope that our leaders both understand and learn from the lessons of Pat's life and death, and also those of so many other brave Americans. Now, Trump's rhetoric still isn't intimidating NFL players. The Green Bay Packers are asking their fans to join them in a show of unity by locking arms during the national anthem at their game tonight with the Chicago Bears. Now, I'm not going to read their statement, but the bottom line is here. It says nothing about police brutality, it says nothing about criminal justice reform, nothing about mass incarceration. So exactly what are we locking arms for?
Hey,
please explain it.
4 minute,
I don't
10 second
understand.
mark.
And
Stop.
speaking of please explaining it, let me take the time for our new segment called Roland's Receipts. So here we go. Y'all ready? We have the stinger ready? Y'all got it? Okay, cool. So we have a thing called Roland's Receipts. This is where people lie and make up stuff, and then I fact check them.
You sound like the volume dropped.
She wasn't prosecuted
Turn
for
up.
last
Sound like the volume
well, then I
dropped.
hit with the facts. So last
So I
night,
can hear.
Scott
Okay.
Bolden,
Okay.
Jason Whitlock, Lou Holtz were all on Tucker Carlson's show talking about the NFL protests. It was a 16-minute segment. Oh my God, it was glorious for the absolute lies being told. Let's start off with this one. This was early in the conversation. Go to my iPad, Shelley.
Players are not protesting the soldiers, the anthem, or the flag. They're protesting police brutality, social injustice, and America's reaction to it, and the fact that it persists. Now, if you don't believe
How do you know that?
Yeah, I know that because
They haven't said that.
well, they certainly have said
No, they
that.
haven't.
They've
You've
said that
seen the majority
repeatedly.
of many teams. I was at the game on Sunday night, and the Raiders, almost every single player, sat for the national anthem,
Absolutely.
and sat as the colors were presented, and not one of them gave a speech there or on Twitter.
Nor were they before
Right.
game.
So all I know is I watched this or after the game. They didn't explain themselves. They protested the American flag and the singing of the
That's just
national
not
anthem.
Oh my God. Y'all, there were numerous players who talked after the game. There were numerous players who have been on Twitter, who were on television, who were on radio, who laid out exactly why they were protesting. Colin Kaepernick is on record explaining why he was protesting. Yo, seriously, that thing actually happened. And what I don't understand is how you can call yourself a journalist and go on TV and just make stuff up and flat out lie. That's exactly what he did. Oh my goodness, okay? The interview gets even better. Okay, let me play a clip 2.
Okay, so we're going to pause it right there. Check that out on Roland's YouTube channel. Go to Roland Martin on YouTube, and that name of that clip is 45. Let's see, that's from September 28, 2017. 45 focuses on bashing NFL players. Martin pulls out the receipts on Tucker Carlson and Jason Whitlock. Now, Jason Whitlock is on Fox Sports. He's African American, but he doesn't think like one. Okay, and he's been attacking Colin Kaepernick for the protests. He won't say why they're really protesting, things like this. Okay, 45 focuses on bashing NFL players. Martin pulls out the receipts on Tucker Carlson and Jason Whitlock. That's about a 16-minute clip, so check that out. Okay, so we saw Friday, we saw the reports and articles Friday dealing with Trump's FBI creating this label called Black Identity Extremist. Black Identity Extremist. So News1.com had an article about this. We saw this other article from, which publication is this? Blavity.com. Blavity.com had a really good article. FBI declares Black Identity Extremist newest domestic terrorism threat. Newest domestic terrorism threat. So when we look at the article from News1.com, the FBI believes that the tarnished relationship between cops and communities of color will, quote, feed the resurgence in ideologically motivated violent criminal activity, end quote. Okay, so a leaked document from the FBI, from the FBI's counterterrorism department, revealed that the U.S. government views Black Identity Extremists as a threat. And this was reported by TheGuardian.com. The Guardian had a big article about this. Foreign Policy, I think it's foreignpolicy.com or .net, had an article as well. In the article from Foreign Policy, they said the use of terms like, quote, Black Identity Extremists, end quote, is part of a long-standing FBI attempt to define a movement where none exists. The use of terms like Black Identity Extremists is part of a long-standing FBI attempt to define a movement where none exists. Basically, it's black people who scare them. Basically, it's black people who scare them. Now, the August 2017 report, which was acquired by Foreign Policy, shows that government officials are worried that individuals will seek retaliation against law enforcement officers due to the rise in police brutality incidents, the news outlet writes. Quote, the FBI assesses it is very likely Black Identity Extremists, or BIE for short, perceptions of police brutality against African Americans spurred an increase in premeditated, retaliatory, lethal violence against law enforcement and will very likely serve as justification for such violence, end quote, the report reads. It also stated that the tarnished relationship between police officers and communities of color will quote, feed the resurgence in ideologically motivated violent criminal activity, end quote. Now, the New York Daily News had a big article about this from a few days ago. And News1.com cites the article from New York Daily News. So the article from New York Daily News is from Saturday, October 7th, 2017. It's called FBI Warns Black Identity Extremists Pose Growing Threat to Law Enforcement. Okay. And let's see. So they reported that the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, August of 2014. The death of Michael Brown who was an African-American unarmed teenager who was fatally shot in August 2014, was noted in the report as an incident that may have incited violence against police. Now, black activists who are on the front lines fighting for justice have received an immense and unjust amount of scrutiny from the U.S. government. Activists say that the monitoring violates their right of free speech. Quote, it marginalizes what are legitimate voices within the political debate that are calling for racial and economic justice, end quote, said Mohammed Tajsar, Tajsar, who's a staff attorney with the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, and he stated this to TheGuardian.com. Now, according to a report released by the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, there has been 98 law enforcement deaths in 2017. This was reported by the New York Daily News. 748 people have lost their lives at the hands of police officers so far this year as well. Now, African-American activists being targeted and monitored by the FBI is nothing new, as we know. Leaders of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense had to endure the same type of scrutiny in the 60s and 70s that Black Lives Matter and other groups are faced with today. This report comes at a time where racial tensions are at an all-time high across the country, following the events that took place in Charlottesville, Virginia. We talked about the beginning of the show, August 12, 2017, at that Unite the Right rally, and the government's failure to label the man behind the Las Vegas massacre as a terrorist. Okay, so check out this article from newsone.com. FBI labels black identity extremists as terrorist threats. And then look at the source article from New York Daily News. FBI warns black identity extremists pose growing threat to law enforcement. Okay, you're going to hear a lot more about this. I know on NBC News today they had a really two good segments dealing with this, and they had one sister who teaches in the Africana Studies department, and they had another brother who is a former special FBI agent. And he was saying basically this term is a made-up term, okay? So check msnbc.com and see if they, I'm trying to check and see if they have that clip. I want to give you the name of it. Hopefully they post it. We'll try to get it up on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Hopefully they post that one. And then Blavity.com has a good article. FBI declares black identity extremists' newest domestic terrorism threat. Okay, but you know, Vox.com and other outlets had the article from what date was this? I printed this October 3rd. White American men are a bigger domestic terrorist threat than Muslim foreigners. Since Trump took office, he took office January 20th, 2017. Okay, today is the is this the 252nd day? Let's see. Today is 262nd. Today is the 262nd day of the Donald Trump regime. He may be forced to resign by the end of the year. Definitely, probably next year, he'll be forced to resign. If you were shocked when Ali B. Foreman's behind, wait till you see Donald Trump resign. He's a con man and a fraud and lost all 3 debates. He's the first Russian president of the United States. So since Trump took office, more Americans have been killed by white American men with no connection to Islam than by Muslim terrorists or foreigners. Look at the article October 2nd, 2017, Vox.com, VOX. When President Trump signed his since revised executive orders banning people from 7 Muslim-majority countries from entering the United States, he claimed it would protect Americans from, quote-unquote, radical Islamic terrorists, the new boogeyman. Quote, Trump said, we don't want them here, okay? But in the 8 months since Trump took office, more Americans have been killed in attacks by white American men with no connection to Islam than by Muslim terrorists or foreigners. How is that possible? In the 8 months since Trump took office, more Americans have been killed in attacks by white American men with no connection to Islam than by Muslim terrorists or foreigners. Radical Islamic terrorists inspired or directed by groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda do pose a clear threat to the U.S. There's no question about that. Before last night's deadly shooting in Las Vegas, the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history, and this is either by one person or a handful of people, okay? And this is in modern history, all right? Before that, it was June 2016, when an ISIS-inspired man opened fire in a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida, the Pulse nightclub, killing 49 people and wounding 53. Here you have 527 at least wounded, 58 killed. The 59th person killed was the shooter, Stephen Paddock. He killed himself, according to reports. And ISIS-linked militants have killed or injured dozens of people in countries like England, France, and Canada so far this year, including 2 women killed in a stabbing in Marseille, France, and several people injured in a car ramming attack in Edmonton, Canada, just last weekend. But here at home in the U.S., the bigger threat has come from a very different kind of attacker. One with no ties to religion generally, and they're not Islamic extremists and have no ties to Islamic extremism specifically. So then they go in and they show you different attacks that just happened this year by white domestic terrorists. Sunday night, so they talk about Stephen Paddock. Then in this past August, a 20-year-old white Nazi sympathizer from Ohio sped his car into a crowd. So that was August 12th, Charlottesville. In June of 2017, a 66-year-old white man from Illinois shot at Republican Congress members during an early morning baseball practice. That's when Steve Scalise was shot, right? March of 2017, a 28-year-old white male from Baltimore traveled to New York City with the explicit aim of killing African-American men. He stabbed 66-year-old Timothy Kaufman to death and was charged with terrorism by New York State authorities. In May of 2017, a 35-year-old white male from Oregon named Jeremy Joseph Christian began harassing Muslim teenagers on a train in Portland, Oregon, telling them, quote, "We need Americans here," end quote. 2 men interceded. Jeremy Joseph Christian then stabbed and killed both of these men. Now, the White House, specifically Trump, is largely silent when you have white domestic terrorists. And when you have white supremacist domestic terrorists, he's largely silent on that. I wonder why. I just found that astounding. Does he get a cramp in his Twitter thumbs when this happens? No, but he'll talk about NFL players kneeling for the national flag. Very interesting. And he sends Pence in to stage this protest, walking out from the 49ers. And you knew they were the 49ers. You knew they were going to do that. It's like in the movie Devil in the Blue Dress, Devil in the Blue Dress, and that scene when Denzel Washington's with Don Cheadle, and Denzel leaves the guy with Don Cheadle, and he comes back and the guy's dead, and he said, "Well, if you want me to kill him, why'd you leave him with me?" Devil in the Blue Dress, okay? All right, so check out this last article from rawstory.com, all right? 5 scary Christopher Columbus quotes that let you celebrate the holiday the right way. This is from October 7th, 2017, just yesterday. 5 scary Christopher Columbus quotes that let you celebrate the holiday the right way. Now, when I teach my online courses, like Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, and I do my presentations, I show you where Columbus went on his 4 voyages. He never came to the land we call the United States of America. So in the article, this article was written by Katie Halper, Halper, for rawstory.com. She says, "You've probably heard lots of great things about Christopher Columbus and tons of inspiring quotes from him about hard work, God, and the sea, S-E-A. But those don't really capture what Columbus and the colonial expansion of which he was part were all about. So without further ado, allow me to present these quotes that you may not have heard from or about Christopher Columbus." So the first one is "Conquest, the perfect chaser for expelling Muslims and Jews." Okay, you don't have to be an academic to link Spain's colonial expansion abroad with its Inquisition at home. Okay, Spanish Inquisition. Columbus made the connection himself. Of course, he saw this as a good thing, not a bad one, a killer combo, if you will. He wrote to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, and he says, Your Highness is Catholic Christians and princes who love the holy Christian faith and the propaganda of it, and who are enemies to the sect of Islam and to all idolatries and heresies, resolved to send me, Cristobal Colon, to the said parts of India to see the said princes with a view that might be converted to our holy faith. Thus, after having turned out all the Jews from all your kingdoms and lordships, okay, because he set sail August 3rd, 1492 on the Nina de Pinta and Santa Maria. That's his first voyage. August 2nd, 1492, the Sephardim, the Sephardic Jews, were expelled out of Spain. And we know January 2nd of 1492, the Moors relinquished their last stronghold in Grenada. That was the Moors leader, Boabdil. So the Reconquista, which started in 722 AD, which was the effort of Spain to reclaim Spain and expel the Moors, take control of those Moorish territories, that was completed, the Reconquista, okay? Number two, these natives are so nice, we'd be crazy not to enslave them. This excerpt from Columbus' diary describes the Arawak people, and they were the larger family, the smaller family were the Taino. Describes the Arawak people who greeted him and his men. These natives are so nice, we'd be crazy not to enslave them. Number three, I was right about how easy that whole subjugation thing would be, he talks about, okay? As soon as I arrived in the Indies, in the first island which I found, I took some of the natives by force in order that they might learn and might give me information of whatever there is in these parts. And so it was that they soon understood us, and we them, either by speech or by signs, and they have been very serviceable. Okay, they go talk about the rape of the indigenous women, etc. Check this article out. You know, take this to school. Have your children take this to school when they talk about current events. Let's deal with some real history. Okay, 5 scary Christopher Columbus quotes that let you celebrate the holiday the right way. And this is why a lot of cities are having Indigenous Peoples Day as opposed to Columbus Day. All right, visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. After you get out of here, make way for Pastor Mo. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the African History Network show on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, the voice of Detroit. Remember, right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.